Nathan had never seen a coffin that looked so heavy. Not because of its size, it was rather small and plain, just like the woman inside it had been, but because of the silence that surrounded it. A silence too thick, too heavy, too final. The pews were filled with family, distant cousins, and neighbors who had been forced into politeness, yet not a single tear was shed. No one mourned Evelyn Hartman. The truth was simple: everyone in that room was relieved she was gone. Nathan sat in the front row, his hands trembling in his lap. He should have been angry too, maybe even glad. His grandmother had never been kind to him. She had been cold, sharp-tongued, critical of every choice, every mistake. She didn't hug. She didn't comfort. She didn't even pretend to love. Evelyn was a storm that lashed out at anyone within reach, and Nathan had grown up believing her cruelty was just the way she was. When the pastor quietly asked if anyone would like to come forward and deliver the eulogy, a suffocating pause filled the chapel. Nathan looked around. His mother stared at the floor. His uncle busied himself with a handkerchief. Cousins fidgeted, whispering excuses to themselves. Nobody moved. And for some reason, Nathan's heart ached, not for Evelyn, but for what it meant that her life would end without a single kind word spoken. So Nathan stood. As he walked toward the podium, whispers followed him. Why him? Why would he bother? He didn't know. All Nathan knew was that no one deserved to leave the world unremembered. He placed his notes on the lectern, though the pages were blank, and began to speak. He didn't talk about Evelyn, the bitter woman who had never hugged him. He talked about the grandmother he wished she had been. The one who, in his story, baked him cookies and read him stories by the fireplace. The grandmother who whispered encouragement when he failed and praised him when he succeeded. He painted a picture of Evelyn as a woman of grace, wisdom, and love, a grandmother who taught patience, who protected her family fiercely, who believed in kindness above all things. His words spun a tapestry of warmth that had never existed. By the time he finished, the air in the chapel was softer. People dabbed their eyes, not for Evelyn, but for the dream of her. For the reminder of what family could be. When Nathan stepped down, a strange mixture of shame and peace filled him. He had lied. He knew it. But perhaps his lies had been a gift, a balm on a wound that would never heal. After the funeral, as people filed out, a tall man in a dark suit approached Nathan. His silver hair was neatly combed, and his sharp eyes held a glimmer of something Nathan couldn't name. "Mr. Hartman," the man said, extending a hand. "I'm Charles Whitmore, your grandmother's attorney. Congratulations, you just passed her final test." Nathan blinked, stunned. "Test?" Whitmore gave a small smile. "She instructed me to tell you this only if you spoke today, and only if you spoke kindly. She left you something. But first, she wanted you to know, the woman you described was real. You just never saw her." Nathan's stomach twisted. "That's impossible. My grandmother was a broken bar." He trailed off, unable to say the word cruel in the shadow of her coffin. Whitmore shook his head. "Your grandmother lived through things none of you could imagine. Losses. Betrayals. A kind of grief that hardens a person. She chose to wear cruelty like armor. But she wasn't always like that. She left behind journals, letters, even photographs. And she left you her estate, not for your use, but to decide what kind of legacy she would leave behind." That night, Nathan opened the first of the journals. What he read shattered and rebuilt him all at once. Evelyn had been 17 when she lost her first child to illness. Her husband, cold and unfaithful, had abandoned her shortly after. She raised Nathan's mother and uncle in poverty, working herself to the bone, judged by everyone around her. Friends betrayed her. Family turned their backs. Over time, she hardened. Her journals were filled with confessions of regret to how she longed to show love, but feared weakness. How she wanted to hold her grandchildren close, but didn't know how to bridge the distance she had created. Page after page revealed a woman Nathan had never known. Evelyn had not been born cruel. She had been made cruel by life, by pain too heavy to carry. Nathan wept as he read. He realized the eulogy he had given of the grandmother he had invented was the woman Evelyn had once been, and perhaps the woman she had hoped he would believe in anyway. The inheritance wasn't money, not really. The estate held her house, her journals, her belongings. But the real inheritance was choice. Evelyn had asked Nathan to decide what to do with her story. Would he bury it along with her, or would he turn her legacy into something meaningful? The months that followed were not easy. Nathan faced resentment from relatives who wanted the estate for themselves. He wrestled with guilt. Was he truly honoring her, or rewriting her life into something more palatable? And he struggled with the anger that still lingered, the child inside him who remembered every harsh word. But slowly, with each journal he read, something shifted. He began to see Evelyn not as a monster, nor as a saint, but as a flawed, wounded human being. And in that realization, he found compassion. Nathan used the inheritance to transform Evelyn's old house into a community center. A place for struggling families, single parents, and lonely children to find comfort, resources, and hope. On the front wall, he placed a plaque that read, "For the hearts that hide behind armor. May they one day feel safe enough to love again." On opening day, the rooms were filled with laughter, stories, and life. Nathan stood in the corner, his chest heavy with emotion. For the first time, he felt he had truly met his grandmother, and not the woman who scolded him, but the woman buried deep inside her silence. Nathan's story is not about pretending pain never existed, or rewriting a cruel past. It's about the masks people wear, the armor built from grief, fear, and loneliness. It's about how love sometimes hides, waiting for someone brave enough to look past the rough edges. His grandmother had left him her final lesson: kindness is never wasted, even if it feels like a lie at first. Sometimes the words we speak in hope become the truth that others were too afraid to live. And in the end, Nathan understood that forgiveness is not about excusing someone's cruelty. It's about choosing to believe in the possibility of love, even when it's buried under layers of hurt. That choice changed Nathan's life. And through him, Evelyn's story, once filled with bitterness, became one of redemption, compassion, and a legacy of healing.